In the opening months of 1942, the United States Navy in Asia was outnumbered and outgunned. With surface fleets reeling and naval bases falling across the Pacific, submarines were pushed to the front lines of a rapidly expanding war. Small, silent, and deadly, they were tasked with disrupting Japan's advance across Southeast Asia. One of these boats was USS Shark, SS-174, a Porpoise-class fleet submarine designed during peacetime but suddenly thrust into action. She carried the hopes of a shrinking Asiatic fleet as she roamed the treacherous waters from Manila to the Maluca Sea. What followed was a series of near misses, quickly changing orders, and a final confrontation that would end in tragedy. This is the story of USS Shark, the submarine that went silent. Shark's journey began at the Electric Boat Company shipyard in Groton, Connecticut. Laid down in October 1933, she was commissioned on January 25, 1936. At 298 feet long and displacing roughly 1,350 tons, the Shark group of the Porpoise class featured improved diesel-electric engines, extended range, and a fully welded pressure hull, which dramatically improved endurance and diving ability. Armed with 6 torpedo tubes, 4 forward and 2 aft, 16 torpedoes, and a 4-inch deck gun, ships could reach speeds up to 19.5 knots on the surface. In the late 1930s, Shark was one of the Navy's most advanced submarines, crewed by 5 officers and about 50 enlisted men. In December 1940, with tensions rising in the Pacific, Shark received new orders, steam west to reinforce the Asiatic fleet in the Philippines. On December 3rd, she departed Pearl Harbor, arriving in Manila, the hub of American submarine operations in the Western Pacific. Throughout 1941, Shark trained alongside older S-class submarines. By mid-year, Lieutenant Commander Lewis Shane Jr., a Naval Academy graduate and career officer, assumed command of the ship. As clouds of war gathered over Asia, Shark's crew went about their routines. Her sailors were far from home, and by late 1941, they could feel something coming in the tropical air. December 7, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Within hours, word reached the Philippines that the United States was at war. The next day, Japanese bombers struck American airfields across Luzon. The Asiatic Fleet's submarine force, under Admiral Thomas C. Hart, braced for what was coming. Shark was ordered to get underway immediately. Her first mission was simply to survive. On December 9th, she slipped out of Manila Bay, just ahead of a wave of enemy air raids. Her patrol took her south of Luzon into Tayabas Bay, where Japanese invasion convoys were expected. On December 10th, Manila was heavily bombed. By escaping the harbor, Shark narrowly escaped the fate of her sister ship, USS Sea Lion, which was fatally damaged. Each night, Shark surfaced under the cover of darkness to recharge her batteries, her lookouts scanning the dark horizon for the silhouettes of enemy ships. Just before Christmas, Shark received orders to return to Manila to pick up an important passenger. By this time, the situation in the Philippines was dire. American forces were retreating, and Admiral Hart, commander of the Asiatic Fleet, made the decision to evacuate himself to safer waters. Shark was chosen to carry him. The submarine rendezvoused at Manila on December 19th. A few nights later, under the cloak of darkness, Admiral Thomas C. Hart and his staff came aboard. At 2 o'clock on December 26th, Shark departed Manila for the last time. With Hart and his team aboard, she set course for Java. On New Year's Day, 1942, Shark arrived in the Dutch East Indies, safely delivering Hart to the naval base at Surabaya. It was a rare success in a season of defeats. The Asiatic Fleet's commander had escaped, thanks to Shark. On January 5, 1942, USS Shark departed Suada Baja on her second war patrol with orders to patrol the Maluca Sea, where Japanese forces were advancing. The crew, hardened by a month of war, steeled themselves for what lay ahead. They didn't have to wait long. The very next day, lookouts spotted the wake of a torpedo homing in on her. A Japanese submarine had fired first, but by luck and skill, the torpedo missed, and Shark crash-dived to safety. Lieutenant Commander Louis Shane reported the encounter back to base. It was a jarring reminder. They were no longer just the hunters. Throughout January, Shark threaded through a labyrinth of islands, from Celebes to the Maluca Passage. These were dangerous waters. Japanese landings swept across the East Indies, and Allied submarines were often the only force contesting them. Shark received a steady stream of shifting orders as Japanese plans unfolded. In mid-January, intelligence suggested an attack on Ambon Island. Shark was instructed to coordinate with Dutch submarines and move toward Ambon. By January 27th, Shark was ordered to join a small Allied Wolfpack screening sea lanes. 2 days later, reports warned of Japanese ships approaching Ambon from another direction. And on January 29th, she received new orders yet again to shift east to the Lifa-Matola Passage. Then, Shark made contact. On February 2nd, patrolling off T4 Island, she sighted a Japanese ship and moved to attack. A torpedo was loosed from her forward tubes, and the crew waited for the telltale roar of impact. But it never came. The torpedo missed, either dodged by the ship or another casualty of the unreliable torpedoes plaguing American warships in early 1942. Japanese escorts struck back fast, rocketing the sea with depth charges. Inside Shark, lights flickered and steel creaked. Her crew held on through 20 detonations as the sub went deep, then deeper still. Eventually, the barrage ended, and Shark slipped away, shaken with only minor damage. In her next transmission, she recounted the close call. Depth charged 10 miles off T4 after a failed torpedo run. Shark had taken her shot and missed, but survived to fight another day. On February 7th, Shark radioed that she had sighted an unescorted cargo vessel, but it appeared empty of cargo or military value. The enthusiastic report did not land well. Captain John E. Wilkes, acting commander of Asiatic Fleet submarines, upbraided Shane, reporting the chase of a lone empty freighter was not worth risking his submarine's position. Chastened, Shark went quiet after the exchange. She would never be heard from again. On February 8th, new orders directed Shark to reposition to the Makassar Strait. A major Japanese force was expected to pass through en route to Java. Shane presumably received the message and turned his boat south. Shark's patrol was due to end by February 24th. As days passed in silence, concern grew in Java. Still, in the chaos of war, no radio communication wasn't uncommon. Shark might have been maintaining stealth or stalking a target. In truth, the sea had likely already claimed her. The exact circumstances of Shark's final moments remain uncertain, yet evidence pieced together from post-war Japanese records points to an encounter in the pre-dawn hours of February 11th. That morning, the Japanese destroyer Yamakaze was on patrol in the Maluca Sea, northeast of Celebes, near Manado. At 1:37, her lookout spotted an American submarine, surfaced in the dark. Yamakaze closed in and opened fire, unleashing her 5-inch guns in a brutal surprise attack. Caught exposed, Shark had little chance to respond. Yamakaze reportedly fired 42 rounds, illuminating the sea with flame. Within moments, Shark began to submerge, possibly trying to crash dive, or possibly sinking. A shell may have breached her hull, or perhaps a hit disabled her diving planes. As Shark slipped beneath the waves, Yamakaze's crew reported voices crying out from the darkness. Some of Shark's sailors had either escaped her hull or had been blown overboard. The Japanese destroyer made no attempt to recover any survivors. All 59 men aboard USS Shark were lost. Back in Surabaya, as February turned to March with no word from the boat, Navy officials began to face the inevitable. On March 7, 1942, USS Shark was declared overdue and presumed lost. She was the first American submarine to be sunk in combat during World War II. Shark's fate marked a grim new chapter in the Pacific War. In a twist of fate, the destroyer Yamakaze, believed to have sunk Shark, would meet her own end on June 25, 1942, just a few months later. She was torpedoed and sunk with all hands by USS Nautilus, south of Yokosuka, Japan. No distress signal from USS Shark was ever received, and no wreckage has ever been found. In the deadly silences of submarine service, some boats were lost at sea in the truest sense. At the time of Shark's loss, the cause of her loss was unknown. No Allied witnesses had seen her final moments. Post-war analysis pointed to surface action with Yamakaze on February 11th, but even that conclusion carries uncertainty, as Japanese records note several anti-submarine engagements in Shark's patrol area. In the spring of 1942, telegrams began arriving at homes across the United States. Families were told their sons, brothers, and husbands were missing in action. For Marjorie Shane, wife of Shark's captain, Lieutenant Commander Louis Shane, the news was devastating. She had married Louis on his graduation day from Annapolis in 1926 and stood by him through every assignment. Now, she faced the cruel silence of the unknown. She would never remarry. For 2 decades, Marjorie believed that her husband had survived, alive on some remote island, still awaiting rescue. Without wreckage or witnesses, many families often clung to any glimmer of hope. Almost a century later, the sea still holds her final secrets. Shark's wreck has never been found. She lies somewhere in the deep, a protected war grave, forever sacred. And yet, Shark is not forgotten. To this day, when the tolling of the boat's ceremony is performed, her name is read aloud. A bell tolls, and heads bow. They remember the 59 men who sailed into danger, facing torpedoes, depth charges, and a final fight in the dark. They remember the silence that followed. They remember Shark,